Now back to Normandy, France, where earlier this morning world leaders gathered to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day. President Trump and French President Macron were among those who watched flyovers from the Omaha Beach overlook.
That marked the end of the celebrations honoring the massive invasion that took place there in 1944. CBS This Morning co-anchor Anthony Mason joins us now from Normandy, France. Anthony, I watched your coverage over the last couple of days. It has been so moving. The interview with Jake Larson was especially touching. Just give us a sense of what it's been like for you to talk to some of these veterans.
Well, I mean, the ceremony today was incredibly moving, and I think the most moving part, I mean, for me, was seeing, the two presidents, President Trump and President Macron, wade into the crowd of vets who were here, about 150 of them in all, and shake hands with, it seemed, almost everyone. I think it looked like they got to just about everyone. And so all these guys who had come a long way, and in your mid-90s, that's not easy to do, got to shake two presidents' hands this morning, and I asked one vet afterwards, I said, what was that like? And he said, I'm on cloud 9. And then he paused and said, no, I'm on cloud 10.
Indeed. One of the things that I thought, the themes that I, heard over and over again, and it was a good reminder now, is the commonality that these allied nations have. And, we've had a lot of people, a lot of countries have disagreements with the president. But I thought it was really refreshing over the past couple of days, Anthony, to see these leaders focus on common ground and a different time when everyone worked together and sacrificed tremendous sacrifices for freedom.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. I asked the commander of European forces, the U.S. commander of European forces, if there was still that kind of cooperation, and he insisted that there still was, although there are political differences now between many of the countries that participated in this invasion. But you can't, this invasion would not have happened if you didn't get the cooperation of the United States and Britain and the French resistance and the Canadians who came on the beach, and ultimately so many other countries as well.
Yeah, Anthony, to your point about French President Emmanuel Macron and President Trump, I thought one of the most moving moments throughout the entire ceremony is President Trump not only shaking hands, but actually hugging some of these veterans. And when you think to their stories, they were 18, 19, 20-year-old boys when some younger when they landed on the beaches of Normandy, to receive a hug from the commander-in-chief. You see a lot of these older men saluting President Trump. It just really brings home the sacrifice. And yet they say to you, as I've heard them say, that the real heroes are those 9,300 souls left behind.
There's an enormous sense among all of them of just how lucky they were. They not only can't believe they're here 75 years later, they couldn't believe they got it off the beach back 75 years ago, because so many of their friends didn't. And what's interesting is there are a great deal who've come back just now for the first time, 75 years later, in their mid-90s. It's a very difficult trip, obviously, for anyone, but it's especially long if you're in your mid-90s. And a lot of them haven't really confronted some of these things. They're telling it to family members for the first time, sharing it in detail. And that's a very moving thing to watch in any circumstance, but particularly with people who are very near the end of their lives.
So, I wonder, you've been to Normandy before. I'm sure you've covered these anniversaries before. What you just sort of pointed out, is that one of the things that makes this experience different for you, or is there anything else that sort of makes this different?
I think the thing that's so extraordinary about this whole moment is, first, is just the sheer epic size of what happened here in terms of the invasion itself, which was the largest amphibious invasion in history, and likely will remain that. I don't think it'll ever happen again. You can't stand on the beach here, on the bluffs overlooking the beach, and think about 150,000 men up and down a 50-mile coastline, under attack by the Germans, and not grasp how profound that moment was. And everybody who came back, every soldier who came back remembers that. It's probably the most defining moment in their lives, the moments that they spent here. And, you know, that lives with you for the next 75 years as it has with all of these men. That invasion changed the course of the Second World War ultimately. It was less than a year before the Germans fell. And you don't really know what would have happened in this world if that hadn't been successful. It was a monumental achievement, the likes of which we'll never see again, and we are rapidly losing the last eyewitnesses and participants in that. It's very moving.
Yeah, indeed. Anthony, thank you so much for your take on things from Normandy.
You know, one